Could trading on-street parking for bicycle facilities actually be better for your business? I would argue yes, and I have the receipts. I'm going to start by referring to this article that my friend sent me about different case studies. And what's fascinating is that each of these case studies has like a different angle to how it's beneficial. But the last infographic I'm going to show is my favorite. So one case study in UC Davis found that cars spent higher per trip than cyclists, but that cyclists would visit the area more. Because when you make a place cycling friendly, it brings down the noise pollution, increases the safety factor. So they found that cyclists spend on average 250 a week in the area versus 180 a week for drivers. This was something else I found interesting in Portland, that while cyclists spent less at the supermarkets, they spent more on the other types of small businesses when you made an area cyclist friendly. This Dublin case study shows that merchants overestimated how many of their customers were actually showing up by car. And there's study after study that shows that cyclists outspend almost every other category of people brought to an area. Also in Seattle, check this out. Look at the sales index after they created bike facilities. Just a hockey stick off the chart. And now for my favorite graphic of this study. In one area in New Zealand where they found that cars actually outspend per hour cyclists, they showed how cyclists actually can bring in more people per hour, especially for like the space that a car takes up for the amount of space cyclists usually take up, pointing to a real number that cyclists actually bring in closer to $97 per hour because more show up than when it was just car-centric. Which brings me to my last graph. This is from a famous study that judged 3 similar streets in San Francisco, one with high car traffic, one with medium, one with low. The lines show connections and relationships of people across the street. The dots show places people tend to dwell and spend time. Notice that in the low traffic street, there's a lot more interconnectivity across the street and a lot more dwelling places, even including the middle of the street. As we slow down Frazier with either plan A or plan B, people are going to spend more time in this area. The capacity of this area is going to increase. The problem is, whenever you emphasize transit that requires parking like cars, you will never have enough parking during peak hours, and there will always be too much during off-peak hours. Now, plan B is replacing the idea of, instead of having 8 additional parking spots, we'll have a bike lane. This bike lane is a safety net and a buffer between cars and the sidewalk. It will lower congestion for cars, but it'll also bring in the most valuable shoppers for those businesses. The last thing I want to bring up is something that someone in the commercial real estate world brought up to me. There's a software that measures dwell time, the average time someone spends in that area when they intend to go visit a store. When you run Frazier through that software, you see that it actually has a lower dwell time than nearby Tremont Street. That means people are spending more time and therefore potentially more money on Tremont Street than they are on Frazier. One reason might have to do with paid parking. If someone's coming to get Clumpies and they paid for parking and they're enjoying Clumpies, but then they run into someone and the person's like, hey, come with us down the street to Collective Clothing. We're gonna go look at some vintage clothes. If they have to walk back to their car to feed the meter or just decide it's not worth pumping in a few extra bucks, they're less likely to stick around and patronize other businesses, whereas cyclists and pedestrians have no such motive. Remember, a good portion of customers are tourists who are staying downtown that come across the bridge. If you haven't already, go to this website and vote for option B. Last night, the city presented but only showed option A to city council and said that they're going to be heavily weighing what people in the area think. So if you're in North Shore, make sure you use your North Shore zip code. And if you're a household of multiple individuals, each of you should use a different device so that it doesn't look like one person refilling out the form 3 times in case they're measuring devices in the background. We want to be above reproach, and we want our voices to be united that Plan B is best. It's what the Department of Transportation recommended. It's what's good for safety. It's what's good for business. It's what's good for traffic congestion. 8 additional parking spaces are not worth the trade-offs with what this bike lane could give us.